think we will get started. I'll just say a couple of words of introduction. My name is Bradley Flam. I'm the director of Westchester University's Office of Sustainability, and I'd like to welcome everybody to our Sustainability Research and Practice Seminar, a seminar series that we co-sponsor with the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs and with Westchester University's Office of Distance Education. We are very happy today to welcome Kathleen Tobelmann, a Westchester University student who is studying sustainable food systems and has been contributing to sustainability efforts at Westchester University for many years now. We're proud of the work she does. We are very much looking forward to learning from her about the Fair Trade campaign and how Westchester University can participate in that initiative. And so please join me in welcoming Kathleen Tobelmann.
Thanks, Brad. So I started the Fair Trade campaign that Westchester University is holding, and in addition to what Brad said about my major being sustainable food systems management and working with the Office of Sustainability, I've learned a lot through the process of our food system, even in high school researching it, and through working along different processes in it, such as a natural grocery store and on a local farm. And throughout that, I found that, and knowing about what happens in our food system, it makes being a consumer really hard when you know what's happening to get your products to the store shelves, and not all of it is really equitable. So I found myself standing in grocery stores, forced to compromise at least one of my values with almost every purchase that I make. And I discovered the Fair Trade campaigns when I was learning about product certifications and corporate social responsibility. And since I was already working closely with sustainability groups on campus, it just felt like the perfect goal to embark on. So working with the purchasing committee, which is a subcommittee of one of the Sustainability Council on campus, we're trying to get more fair trade products on campus and eventually get the university to become a certified fair trade university. There's actually 5 of us on the steering committee for this campaign, and I'll discuss the campaign a little bit further in the second half of the presentation. But before I get into the work we're doing, I think it's important to discuss a little bit about why fair trade organizations were started. So today we're going to talk about the resources and economics of high demand fair trade commodities, the difference between free trade and what fair trade fights for, and then our campaign and what the future of that looks like. So American consumers seek a safe, diverse, and abundant food supply that's available throughout the year while being also affordable. And to help meet consumer demands, the United States imports about 15% of its overall food supply. And that's from the Food and Drug Administration. Today, more than 200 countries or territories and roughly 125,000 food facilities and farms supply 32% of the vegetables that we eat, 55% of the fresh fruit that we eat, and 94% of all of the seafood that Americans consume. So 15% seems small compared to those numbers, but knowing that the typical American diet is mostly meat, corn, and soy-based products anyway, kind of makes sense that in total we don't import as much of these types of products. And also knowing that popular American foods such as bananas or coffee aren't supported by our climate. Most common fair trade products are banana, cocoa, coffee, sugar, tea, and cotton. But fair trade can encompass all types of products such as clothing and textiles. Being a nutrition major, most of what I focus on and my knowledge is around is fair trade food. So most of the examples that I talk about are going to be surrounding that. But it's also because most of the workers in our supply chain and producing these high demand commodities are most often exploited. And the fact that we have such a high consumption of these products that we can't grow ourselves, we heavily rely on these other countries, especially developing countries, to provide us with the preferences that we have. So in that, it's important that our arrangements aren't taking advantage of them. So the US creates free trade agreements with other countries. That's how we trade things. And these allow countries to focus on their core competitive advantages, what they're good at, in order to maximize their economic output. So the focus is on removing restrictions, tariffs, regulations placed on these imports and exports. So one country may have cheaper access to resources or labor due to lower costs of living or other factors, and that makes them more efficient in making that product. Free trade means that not only other countries potentially having cheaper resources, but removing the regulations also can help lower the costs, making it more efficient. The cost of tax would normally be incorporated in the end cost that the consumer pays. So without those, we can have cheaper products that are affordable for everyday people. The downside of free trade is that the actual cost of production doesn't matter as much because financial markets are actually controlling the price. But it also means that we can have a diverse amount of goods in new areas that wouldn't normally have them. So a lot of the common products like the coffee or tea or bananas that I mentioned before that we eat on a daily basis wouldn't be able to happen without these free trade agreements. It's a lot more complicated than this, and I'm not an economist, so I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but these are the basics that you kind of need to know of what fair trade is working on. Another factor that's actually out of control of free trade is the effect of climate on the market. So I have a little bit of an example to explain how this can affect workers and farmers. Being that the climate is such a key part of their work, farmers and factories and plantations can be among the most vulnerable people in global trade. So 2 examples of how this works. First, say there's a coffee producer and a frost occurs in July in Brazil. And that makes coffee prices skyrocket because now there is less of a supply to meet that demand. And due to a contract that they created before the frost, the producer, the coffee grower, has to still sell their coffee at that previously agreed upon price. And that's lower than what the market price is right at that time. So that means that they're making less money and able to sell less product. The opposite can happen, where if that frost doesn't occur that they expected to occur and they planned for, there could be a huge excess of coffee on the market, causing prices to drop because there's more demand. There's more supply that they can sell. There's not enough demand. And so then the coffee producer is making out better because the buyer has to still pay that higher price that they agreed upon before the contract. So it can go both ways. The farmer or the seller of the coffee can both be affected, but being that the climate is the main reason, fair trade sets different standards so that farmers can be protected. So 2 of these are setting a minimum price and creating a premium. And this is to address the imbalances of our system. So the minimum price that fair trade sets is a price floor that keeps farmers afloat. So in the event that the climate does affect their output of a coffee crop or whatever crop that they're producing, the market price, if it goes below that minimum, they'll still be getting paid that minimum amount, giving them a little bit more economic security. But fair trade also adds on a premium, so that's a bonus that goes directly to producer cooperatives to fund and support after-school programs, sustainable farming practices, health initiatives, and other worker welfare programs. So besides that, fair trade supports farmers through cooperatives where that premium goes. It also gives support to farmers through them being able to have more community with each other and using each other as a resource. Fair trade provides access to credit for farmers if they're interested in expanding their farming operations or recovering from failed harvests. The premium and the minimum price floor that they set, giving them a more stable income, means that they have less of a need for child labor to support their families. And finally, fair trade works to also preserve natural habitats and climate because farmers are relying on it so much. So they prohibit the use of genetically modified organisms and just work to create more sustainable farming practices. But a more clear definition of what fair trade is, it's considered not only a nonprofit, but also a social movement. And it's based on the simple idea that the products we buy and sell are connected to the livelihoods of other people. So they seek to enable economic development through equitable trading partnerships. So fair trade organizations create these voluntary labeling initiatives, all with the same goal to create equity and transparency throughout our supply chain. There are some differences between these organizations, such as some are international and some work simply on American partnerships like Fair Trade USA. There's a downside to this program, the fact that in order to become fair trade certified, there are certain costs associated with that and being a part of the program, which means that many small businesses can't afford to carry their logo. So I wouldn't say it's an all-encompassing solution, but a step in the right direction, allowing the consumers and people along the supply chain to know what they're supporting. But these logos on the left, you guys see that? Yeah, are some examples of the ones that you can see on your products. And there's another one that you can see, which is the bottom left, that says fair trade ingredients. It's a little bit different in that some products that are made from multiple ingredients might only have one ingredient mixed in that is fair trade certified. And this allows them to still support the initiative, but maybe not everything is available as fair trade. And there's a lot of products that actually use that one. So our campaign, Media PA was actually the first recognized fair trade town in America in 2006, which is really cool because they're so close to us. And I actually remember my aunt working closely with this initiative and being influenced by that as a kid, but didn't fully understand what they were trying to do. And the Fair Trade Campaigns organization that I work with formalized in 2013, so fairly new, and our campaign became active in fall of 2019. So our team is a group of 4 students and 1 faculty, and we also have a lot of support from the Students for Sustainable Action Club on campus. One of our goals is to reach out to campus outlets and find products that are already being sourced with fair trade ingredients or being fair trade on their own. And we want to ensure a minimum of 2 fair trade products are available at all campus-owned and operated venues. So Students for Sustainable Action spent a few meetings auditing campus outlets on campus, like the Pods, Larry's, Campus Bookstore, and Eco Grounds. And we found 5 fair trade products through all of this, and only 1 campus outlet that had the minimum of 2. But like I mentioned before, simply an ingredient in a specific flavor of a product can change whether it's fair trade or not. So the images here of these fair trade products are the exact products that we found. So one of the Larabar there, only that flavor of Larabar was fair trade, and we found Larabars in other outlets on campus, but they weren't that flavor, so they weren't fair trade. So it's like very specific. Same with the Ben & Jerry's, there are 3 flavors that are fair trade: American Cone Dream, Half Baked, and Caramel Cookie Fix. So those were all in Larry's. But just because products aren't marked as fair trade doesn't mean that they're not having these great practices. Like I said, they might not be able to afford it, or it might just not be their priority, but they aren't necessarily always treating their workers, or their system isn't always bad. So that's why the minimum is so small. When I first started the campaign, I thought that was crazy that only 2 fair trade products were necessary. But learning that, and also that there's just like not everything can be certified fair trade, and it doesn't need to be. So the next thing that we are working on is enrolling offices and catering in the work that we do. So this goal is that we have to have a minimum of 3 examples of campus-run meetings and events that are providing fair trade options if they're having food there. So the Students for Sustainable Action, we host student brandywine projects where we talk about fair trade, and we were going, where we talk about sustainability, but we were going to talk about fair trade at our one happening in April. That can't happen now because we're all online. But I've been speaking with sustainability peer educators, and they are going to have fair trade products at their events that they host in the dorms. And hopefully these research and practice seminars, their coffee and tea that they provide in the future, can be fair trade certified. And then those 3 initiatives can continue to have fair trade products and eventually expand to other organizations on campus. Our 4th goal is a commitment to fair trade education and events. So far, last spring, we had Banana Day, which today is Banana Day this year, and we were hoping to do the same thing. But last year we had a table and we taught about fair trade because bananas are one of the bigger fair trade commodities. And this year we were hoping that Banana Day would also source fair trade bananas. But hopefully that's an initiative that will come in the future. We're hoping to have games and educational activities during the event in the future. But the first one so far was a success. And then this spring we had a Fair Trade Valentine's Day where we handed out Fair Trade certified chocolate and condoms. We've had more than these 2 events. Another event that we helped at was Pack It Up, Pass It On clothing swap, where we talked about slow fashion. I didn't really think our role was large enough at that event, so I don't count it as one of our 4 events. But we hope to make Banana Day our biggest continual event, and maybe I think that this event would even count. So we're really going more than the 4 because the education of fair trade is really one of the biggest goals. And our final goal is to pass a fair trade resolution through the university. So I'm drawing up a resolution that reflects our college's commitment and hoping to get it signed by the president. I also hope to incorporate the initiatives within the purchasing policy in the university's climate action plan, and just have the university continually make this a priority. So right now, in the future, we're obviously hoping to continue those 4 goals, but most of our committee, for all 4 students that are on it, are graduating in May, next month. So we're searching for a new steering committee. But you can see our progress. You can scan this QR code and it'll bring you to our website that shows you our goals. And you can follow us on Students for Sustainable Action because that is the club that's currently working with us. So, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. And we're excited for the future of the campaign. So thank you guys for listening. That is all I have today. But if you guys have any questions.
Thanks, Kath.
Thanks, Gabby.
Good job, Kath. Thank you. That was great. Thank you. I learned a lot. I didn't understand a lot of fair trade stuff before that, so.
Yeah, I did a lot of research in preparing for this about what our free trade markets meant and like why fair trade was really necessary for that. And it's a very controversial topic. And in researching it all, I think that I agree that fair trade isn't the overall solution to have like a third-party certifier like that. But they definitely hold the values that I believe that our system should uphold. So
Definitely.
Kathleen, that was a really interesting introduction to fair trade and to what's been happening on campus. I know I have some questions, but I don't want to just jump in. I think there's, a small enough number of us on the webinar that anybody should feel free to unmute themselves and to pose a question. I have some, but I'd like to wait and let somebody else go first.
I feel like then I always go first, but but
Go for it, Steve.
I'm just curious about in having conversations around thinking about the broader context of social justice issues and inequities, looking at how fair trade products, free trade products tend to have more, tend to be more expensive, and then if as we transition into our institution, what barriers that may present to our students if we shift over to more intentionally sourced products. So I was just curious about if you had any ideas about how to address that, so we're not placing the burden on another marginalized group in a sense.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge with all of this, and especially adding that fair trade premium onto a product. That's kind of like an extra step in supporting the farmer, but also an extra step in the opposite for the consumer. So that's also the part of fair trade that I don't think is totally necessary for all products, but a really great thing for especially marginalized farmers. But with this campaign in particular, the fact that they only require 2 products in each campus outlet, it still leaves a lot of room for products that consumers that can't afford that or can afford, but in an overall transition so that all of our products can become more equitable. The only thing that I can ever think of as a solution is that we subsidize different things than corn and soy and start subsidizing like fruits and vegetables and supporting better things than just that. But that's the like nutrition politics that I know about, and yeah, I don't have an answer fully for it. But it's a good question, something to think about.
Awesome, thanks. I'm with you on that.
Kathleen, I'm curious about the whole process of certification and some of the links that I think you suggested between fair trade and the principles that motivate both producers and buyers to engage in fair trade. And the whole idea of organic farming. Is there a connection, a direct connection between those 2 certifications, fair trade and organically produced fruits and vegetables?
There actually, as I had found a statistic that about 50% of all fair trade farms are also, or just products are also holding the organic USDA organic certification. So there's a big correlation between that, because since the farms are striving to be more sustainable in their practices, then I think that if that product, especially because they're marketing it towards people who are maybe a higher income and can afford to pay the higher price, that those people are also looking for those certifications. So they definitely go hand in hand.
Good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Domestically, there's also the concept of B corporations, and I know that some of the other people on this call right now, like Professor Calvano, are very familiar with that concept. I'm wondering if there's a connection between fair trade and B corporations. And Kathleen, I'd be curious what you know about it, but if some of the other people on the call would like to join in, please do.
I'm not sure that there's definitely still a correlation because it's all corporate social responsibility. I don't think it's as high as the USDA organic certification. But they are fighting for the same things. I think of B Corp as more for like local US products, and fair trade, at least the international organization, focuses on farmers in other countries. But I know that Fair Trade USA is hoping to start a fair trade dairy initiative, which will focus on US farms. So that's really interesting. And maybe that sort of certification would go hand in hand with B Corp. I don't know. I would love to hear what other people think too.
That's a really good point, Kath, about the international versus the domestic. I hadn't thought about that before. Could you just say a little bit more about the domestic fair trade certification and what might be similar or different, or where that might overlap with other things? Because that I haven't heard about that, and that's really interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting as well. I don't know that anything has been certified with that so far. That's how new it is. I think they're still maybe developing the standards, and I didn't read totally into it, but yeah, I think that that's part of the controversy with fair trade as well, is because I also support like local products and wanting to support the local economy. But since if you're going to buy certain products like the coffee or the bananas that can't be grown here, then they kind of, I don't think there's competition between the two, I guess. I think that they go hand in hand well because of that. It's just a matter of what your household demand is in your house, and if you can get it locally, I think I would suggest that first.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of community-supported agriculture would, even if they're not certified as fair trade, if you look at the principles of fair trade and the principles by which community-supported agriculture farms function, I would imagine there's a really strong overlap between those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially because CSAs are kind of similar to the credit that fair trade is providing for farmers, and the fact that when consumers pay in the beginning of the season, that's kind of like getting an upfront cost for the farm to operate for the rest of the year. But yeah, also just having a value for the people that are growing your food and knowing how hard that is. I think, yeah, that's the biggest similarity.
So I want to jump in for a second about back to because I was just thinking about this, back to the B Corporation and fair trade. I think as opposed to like fair trade or CSAs, B Corps tend to be kind of larger and more mature companies. Like I'm thinking of the ones that are most famous, like Patagonia or Dansko Shoes or Seventh Generate, right? They sort of have larger supply chains, large employee base. So it's, I agree with Kath that the principles are similar, but the B Corp is kind of a little bit of a different market.
Mm-hmm. And with what Steve was saying about like making sure these products are still affordable, the certification system really does take that away. And when a company is having one certification, they know that their consumers value that. So then they're paying for more certifications, and that cost keeps getting put on the consumer. So those bigger companies are going to hold more certifications than the smaller companies, no matter what.
Yep, that's absolutely right.
Kathleen, I'm curious about the last of the 5 actions that are part of a university or college becoming a fair trade campus, and having a resolution be signed. What does such a resolution look like? What would President Fiorentino, if he's going to support this initiative, what would that letter say about Westchester University and its commitment to the principles of fair trade?
They actually provided an example resolution through the campaign, and I have a fellow who I speak to and who gives me guidance throughout the campaign. And speaking to her, I thought that it would be similar to the goals that we have as a campaign to have at least 2 fair trade products, or like very specific, like certain quantities of things and certain initiatives. But reading the example one that they have, it's actually very broad, and it's mainly just signing a piece of paper that's saying that you're going to do something. It's we're going to implement better purchasing policies or focus on fair trade, without really saying how you're going to go about doing that. And so that's why I think the climate action plan is really important, because that is maybe where we can have more specific objectives for the campaign. But it also helps in making administration feel a little bit more comfortable signing something, I think, that they aren't committing to putting in a big amount of effort or something that in the end they maybe aren't going to do. It's so it has a good aspect to it in that it's maybe easier to get signed, but then to me that feels like, what's the point of getting it signed if no action is going to occur after that? So for the purchasing policy, I really hope to be more specific.
Thank you. Yeah, I think about what is the vision, what are the values, what is the mission of Westchester University? And we are really explicit about describing ourselves as a community of educators, a community of learners, a place where education has an impact on the personal and professional and academic lives of all of our communities, students, faculty, staff, alumni, and others. And this initiative to think about trade and the impacts that trade has on buyers and producers, on communities right in our backyard, or communities in countries very far away from us. I think there's a strong connection between the idea of fair trade and what it means to the lives of people all over the world, and our educational mission. And I would think a resolution that makes that connection is one that would be important, not just to President Fiorentino, but to the entire campus community. I think there's also a really interesting opportunity in that President Fiorentino is an economist. He thinks hard about economic systems and the impacts that economic systems have on people's lives. And so I think you're on to something that would be meaningful to our president, to the president's cabinet, to all of our community in lots of different ways. And I think the effort to develop a resolution with President Fiorentino, with the broader community, opens up some really interesting opportunities for learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish that I knew more about economics, because I feel like that when I am learning about all of the things about our food system and what is holding the equitability of them back, it's always the fact that balance between the producers being able to make a living and the consumer being able to afford their product. And I don't know if maybe I need to know more about economics in order to know how to solve that, or what. Yeah.
Or maybe just create opportunities to work with and learn from people who do have that background, mm-hmm. Including President Fiorentino.
Yeah, it takes a village. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that got me thinking about, so one of the things that I've been kind of struggling with is with working with our department on how we're being intentional about our uniforms for our students. And I know one of the big issues is that through athletics, there's the partnership with Under Armour, which if you look into the ethics of Under Armour as a company, I would argue it does not conform to the mission of Westchester University. However, there's a lot of pressure to work directly with Under Armour because they give us a 50% off discount, and then we also get a kickback when we get different apparel items. So that's been a big struggle. So I'd be curious to see what approaches there would be to emphasizing that true cost, to cite the documentary. That's pretty good, but but of products, and how you put that at the forefront when we're having these conversations, and kind of shift that lens, and even think about, why do we need a new uniform every year, things like that. Mm-hmm. That was an out loud thought. Sorry about that.
No, that's very valid. It's sometimes I just get sucked in a hole of like thinking about it, and then there comes a point where I just don't even know what to say anymore. But yeah, it's like the bigger companies that have the money to support initiatives like this, I think it's important that they do, if you have the ability to support it, that once we have more people supporting it, it will hopefully be able to trickle down and be able to be more accessible for everybody to support. Yeah.
Kathleen, I have one more question, but I'm trying to give others a chance to speak up. But I'll throw my question out, and others can think about other questions. To what extent, in conducting your survey of the availability of fair trade products on campus, have you communicated with SSI, which is in charge of the campus bookstore, and with Aramark, which is in charge of purchasing products that are sold in the pods and at eco grounds? Have those parts of our campus community been involved in conversations around fair trade products?
In doing our audit, the only person that I was able to directly talk to that maybe had some influence on what products were being purchased was that new store next to Saxby's. I always forget what it's called, but it's like a little gas station store. And the manager was there, and I was doing like walking through, and it was pretty empty, and looking for fair trade products that they had, and they didn't end up holding any. So I sparked up a conversation with him and talking about the initiative, and he was explaining that they choose their products based on what their distributor has available to them. And I brought up bringing whether he could talk to the distributor about whether those products were available for them, but didn't really follow up. So my focus has been more on Aramark and because we only really did an audit of the outlets that students can walk up to and buy something, but included in the outlets on campus that need a minimum of 2 products would be like Aramark in Lawrence. I don't really eat there, so I don't really know. I haven't been able to really look in there. But Aramark has been very overwhelmed with the amount of sustainability initiatives and people trying to come and work with them. So that is why our connection is hopefully through the purchasing subcommittee. And Dr. Subak is in charge of that, and she was planning on doing a dinner with them at the end of the semester. So I'm not sure when that would be rescheduled to discuss a little bit further how to make all of the possibilities that we are coming up with get a little bit closer to them. But yeah, so I haven't been able to really talk directly with very many people about it. It's been more on the ground, getting education and waiting for other people to contact them.
And Kathleen, how did the campus bookstore do?
And the campus bookstore, we didn't talk to anybody from there yet.
And did they have any fair trade products?
Any fair trade products. I really thought that they might have chocolate, but they didn't end up having anything. And that one it's hard for me to think about what products they could offer besides just simple things like that, like having chocolate, because they have like that little candy thing when you check out. And that's usually the easiest place for any of these outlets to offer things. It's usually coffee, tea, or chocolate. Eco Grounds had their whole mission is surrounded around fair trade coffee, but they didn't seem to have a second product. Even their tea, I don't think their tea was fair trade certified. So that would be like the next step for them, is just to implement that. Yeah.
All right, good, thank you. And any last questions? We have about 5 minutes left.
If you know of anybody who's interested in being on our new steering committee, please advertise it. If you're a professor in your classes, or if you're in a club as a student.
So Kathleen, I would ask that tomorrow, maybe if you're online or when you're online in GEO 205, that you make a pitch, please, again, for having some students maybe work on this next year. Mm-hmm. And, you know, as we're talking about this, and we've mentioned CSAs, and we've mentioned B Corps, and we've mentioned fair trade, is there a way to expand the certification process? Maybe union made, maybe locally grown, maybe regenerative agriculture and organic. There's got to be more ways than just fair trade that we can promote sustainable consumption and sustainable production and fair and equitable production and growing of these items. And I think fair trade is a great start, but maybe we should expand the idea and the definitions of ways that this could happen. And I would say to you, have you heard of that? Are there other people talking about other certifications that might promote what we're trying to promote with this fair trade designation?
I think that the B Corp certification is probably the most well-rounded one that hits most, like, as much as fair trade has a little bit of a focus on sustainability in the environment and how they're doing their practices. Their focus is mainly on the welfare of the people, which is awesome because there's other certifications that like the USDA organic that can go hand in hand with it. But I think that the real solution wouldn't be a certification system, and it would just be the way free trade market, and we create free trade agreements, and somehow, not that I really want everything to be totally regulated so much, but to somehow make it so that people are held accountable for the way their products are being made without it being a separate body from like a third party certifier, and instead just everybody has the same standard. But I don't know how to make that happen.
Cultural shift, paradigm shift, right?
Exactly.
Well, we are almost at 12:50 when we traditionally end the seminar. I would like to make one last comment before we say thank you to Kathleen, and that's that you did note that there's an opportunity for the Sustainability Research and Practice Seminar when we're back on campus to commit to fair trade refreshments. We currently use New Street Catering, and I'm pretty sure the cookies there are not using fair trade ingredients, although I could be wrong. We will find out. I believe the coffee is through a company that is fair trade. So we're halfway there, but we will commit to making sure that we're all the way there when we're back on campus. Kathleen, thank you so much for putting together this presentation and generating this really interesting conversation. We look forward to helping you find some students to carry on this good work, but we've got more work to do before you graduate in May. So we'll look forward to working with you in the coming weeks. So please join me in saying thank you to Kathleen Tobelmann.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kath.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Have a lovely day.
Thanks, Kathleen. Talk to you soon.